$4.3 million a year she earned in today's dollars.
Wow.
That, when I stumbled across this, I thought, this just is an example of this era that we're going to talk about tonight. It was an era of opulence. It was a cultural awakening for those in Madison County and certainly across the nation. But this really typifies the kind of performers that the opera houses catered to and the monies that they commanded. Historically, it was a significant era in Madison County because of the discovery of natural gas. With that discovery came a period of previously unimaginable prosperity that ushered in an era of cultural awakening unlike anything our citizens had ever witnessed before. It was the era of the opera houses in our county, and it represents a period when our predecessors experienced entertainment on a whole new level, far beyond anything they had previously experienced. 4 major railroads passed through Madison County. I show them to you here. This is the Big Four coming through Pendleton to Anderson. This would be the Michigan division of the Big Four, and this would be the Pennsylvania Railroad. This is the Pennsylvania Railroad going through Frankton and Elwood, and this is the Lake Erie and Western coming through Alexandria and Elwood. The Michigan division of the Big Four made regular stops in Anderson and Alexandria. The Lake Erie and Western in Alexandria and Elwood. The Pennsylvania in Anderson and Frankton. How many have seen that Frankton depot? It's still there. And in Elwood. And the Big Four in Pendleton and in Anderson. Those 5 towns built opera houses to attract the traveling shows that utilized the railroads to crisscross the United States, performing wherever and whenever there was a suitable venue. Seating capacity was a major consideration simply because more attendance meant more revenue. In Madison County, we had a variety of capacities which reflects a direct correlation with the size of the production that played there. We begin with the smallest, the Pendleton Opera House. The arrow points to the opera house that still stands in downtown Pendleton. The beginning and end of the opera house era in Pendleton is difficult to determine. The building that once housed the opera house survives today and is located at 117 North Pendleton Avenue. The building is rectangular shaped and originally measured roughly 25 feet in width and 100 feet in length. Today it is the same width but much longer. It retains little if any original components. The original building can be found on a Sanborn Paris company map dated October 1892 here. Note the Sanborn maps, as they came to be called, were created to assist insurance agencies in assessing the fire risk of properties. Hence, those buildings in yellow were wood, the buildings in pink were brick. On the map, the 2-story wooden building is identified as a repository, meaning it was being used for storage. Its address was 216 Tariff in Pendleton. The property was owned by Dr. Ossian H. Cook, a Pendleton physician. He had acquired it sometime in the early to mid 1890s. At some point between 1895 and 1899, Dr. Ossian Cook sold the property to his older brother, Dr. John W. Cook, also a Pendleton physician. An 1898 Sanborn map shows the same building identified as an opera house. The opera house portion was located on the first floor and was entered by a door centered on the east end facing the street. A notation on the map states the first floor contained stage and scenery. At the west end of the building was a single-story wooden addition which first appears on the 1898 map. It was approximately 25 feet square. It can be assumed it was added to store costumes, scenery, props, and to house dressing areas. Given this assumption, the stage would then naturally be located at the west end of the main building next to the addition, thus providing easy access back and forth between the stage and the dressing storage area. A hall encompassed the second floor of the building. And here you can see that January 1898 sandboard map for Pendleton, showing the Opera House on the first floor. And that's it today. How many have gone by that and not known that was an opera house? The hall was reached by the outside stairway located on the building's north side. Its use was not specified. By 1898, the street numbering system in Pendleton was undergoing a change, much the same way it was here in Anderson. The former 216 tariff address for the Opera House was being converted to 18 North Pendleton Avenue. Pendleton's population in 1898 was 2,300 citizens. A 1900 street directory shows both brothers practiced medicine 3 doors north of the Opera House at 26 North Pendleton Avenue. Dr. Ossian Cook made the office his home, while his brother John and wife Sarah lived next door at 30 North Pendleton Avenue. The next sandboard map available is dated 1908. The Opera House designation is gone and the space is marked Wholesale Candy. A 1914 map indicates the building was vacant, and here they are. Thus, it's difficult to determine exactly when the Opera House was in use. A photograph dated circa 1900 shows workmen laying rails for the interurban that went through Pendleton. In the background, on the side of the building, can clearly be seen Cook's Opera House, suggesting ownership by one or both brothers. And I call your attention to back here. Cook's Opera House. I'm having cataract surgery a week from yesterday and today, 2 days in a row. I can't see that now, but I saw that earlier, so I know it's there. The Pendleton Gazette newspaper during the years 1900 and 1901 makes mention of a wide variety of events taking place at the Opera House. These include receptions, speeches, band concerts, performances by local players and minstrel shows, an oyster supper. Probably gleaned from Fall Creek, wouldn't you think? Commencement exercises for the Fall Creek Township schools, a hypnotist, and the various traveling theater companies that, as I said earlier, pass through Pendleton. The only mention of the building's capacity was found in an article in the November 2nd, 1900 issue of the Pendleton Gazette, wherein it stated that Colonel Durbin of Anderson addressed an audience of 400 at the Opera House. The article went on to say the house was crowded. I imagine it was. And several hundred were unable to gain admittance to the hall. Winfield Durbin was campaigning for the office of Governor of Indiana, which we all know he won. A notice in the Pendleton Gazette for Friday, February 2nd, 1900 may explain why Cook's Opera House apparently did not last long. It reads, quote, "Peck's Bad Boy, as given at the Opera House Wednesday evening, was a fine show, and the house should have been crowded. Worse shows are often seen at Indianapolis." Why do not Pendleton people patronize more liberally the high-class shows which come here? If they did, the band could ensure them the worth of their money every time, but as it is a hard matter to induce the best companies to stop here. Pendleton Opera House, 1898 to an unknown. The Frankton Opera House. The arrow points to where the Opera House was located in Frankton. The Frankton Opera House was located on the second floor of a rectangular-shaped three-story building known as the Commercial Building, which was located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Sigler and John Streets in Frankton. The brick commercial building had three entrances, all with stairways leading to the second floor. It was the east stairway entrance nearest the intersection that led to the Opera House. At the top of the stairs was an open room approximately 62 feet wide and 150 feet long with a 12-foot ceiling. A stage with scenery filled the south end with a ceiling that extending the height of the building to 3 floors. Now in Frankton, the three-story building is a pretty good-sized building. Natural gas lights, footlights illuminated the stage. And this is again an insurance map, September 1895. The arrow points to the Opera House. The capacity of the Frankton Opera House is unknown, but since it was 9,300 square feet compared to Pendleton's 2,500 square feet, it can be assumed that Frankton's seating capacity was much larger than the 400-person capacity of Cook's Opera House in Pendleton. And here you see the July 1900 map. Again, it's a brick building, but the stage area and the shaft going up is made from out of wood. The Frankton Opera House existed from at least 1895 through the end of the gas boom era in the early 1900s. Frankton's population during this period was between 1,900 and 2,000 people. Once the boom ended, the Opera House discontinued operating. Several lodges then occupied the space, but a fire destroyed the building, and by November 1909, nothing but ruins remained of the former entertainment center. And you can see on the map the ruins of fire. And that is the corner where the Frankton Opera House was located from 1895 to, again, an unknown period of time. The Alexandria Opera House, the arrow pointing to its location. And this is the Opera House in Alexandria. The home of the Alexandria Opera House was an impressive three-story building located on the southeast corner of Harrison and Church Streets. The Opera House was located on the ground floor of the building and measured 50 feet wide by 150 feet long. In 1892, 4 men, C.F. Heritage, Albert Gordon, R.H. Hanna, and S.E. Young collaborated to erect a handsome building destined to become Alexandria's Center for Entertainment and Public Meetings at a reported cost of $40,000. Remember that $40,000 figure, if you will. The arrow points to the Opera House. On January 25, 1896, the Alexandria Opera House advertised in the New York Dramatic Mirror. Manager E.O. Clinton proudly announced to New Yorkers that his opera house, complete with electric lighting, could seat 650 people. And that Alexandria, with a population of 6,000, was growing faster than any other city in Indiana. Here you see a May 1896. You would have entered the Opera House through a long hallway and then entered the main theater. These are balcony seating. This is the stage. This hallway would have had posters lining both sides of the hallway as people went down to enter the theater proper. The Opera House was used for a variety of purposes. When a church congregation was in need of a place to conduct services, they used the Opera House. It was also the site of school baccalaureates and commencement exercises. Silent movies were shown there when they first began to appear in Madison County around 1912. The Opera House was regularly visited by actors, well-known orators, and traveling evangelists. Alexandria citizens were often treated to plays and musicals produced and performed by local talent. This is a photograph that I found of the Alexandria Opera House advertising a grand musical concert Saturday evening, January 9th, 1904. And this man right here, his name is Shire, is related to my wife. Pretty neat. Patrons who entered the 123 North Harrison Street address were conducted through a 75-foot long hallway before entering the performance area. Undoubtedly, the entrance was lined with advertisements for the current and future shows. Once inside, patrons could see the opposite or east end of the great room, a convex-shaped stage complete with appropriate scenery for the evening's performance. Electric footlights running its entire width illuminated the stage. The stage was elevated 8 feet above the main floor and contained 3 trapdoors for the adding and removing of stage props, and I suppose acts that didn't appeal to the audience. The seating capacity was 754 people, which included the seating on the main floor and the seating of a partial gallery above that extended over the main floor for approximately 50 feet. 754 folks could fit in there. For live performances, there was space available for an 8-piece orchestra led by H. Bedden between the footlights and the stage. And again, on the left is the Alexandria Opera House, downtown Alexandria. This is Harrison Street. For those of you who know Alexandria, this would be the intersection of Church and Harrison in downtown Alexandria, looking south. A March 1902 By 1899, Alexandria's population was 8,000, up from its 1892 level of 1,900, a clear result of the gas boom. 2 years later, that figure was 11,000, and 10 years after that, 12,000. The Opera House was in its heyday as the growing population patronized the popular establishment. November 1909. In 1912, the Opera House was purchased for $13,000. Remember, it was built for what? Not a very good return on investment. And another $5,000 was spent by the new owner to make repairs and remodel. Most likely, remodeling included the necessary equipment to show the new silent films being produced in Hollywood that were sweeping across America. Sadly, around 4 a.m. on February 6, 1914, John Hickman, a porter for the Libler barbershop on Harrison Street, discovered smoke rolling from the Cripe Brothers newsstand located in the Opera House building. When the fire department arrived, they found the basement of the building filled with smoke. After the first 45 minutes of firefighting, the firemen thought they had the blaze under control and were celebrating that they'd saved the building. But that was short-lived. Unexpectedly, a heavy flame burst from the roof. The blaze, which was thought to have started in the furnace room, had found its way underneath the floor of the Opera House and made its way up through the second and third floors to the roof. Flames then spread quickly to every portion of the building. The west wall of the building collapsed around 5:30. Fire Chief Merker called for help from the Anderson Fire Department. A special interurban train carrying Anderson Fire Chief Alford, several firemen, and 5,000 feet of hose arrived in Alexandria at 6 o'clock. However, it was too late as the building was soon a total loss. Water-soaked firemen had fought the fire for 5 hours before it was over. It was said that half the population of Alexandria was on hand to view the scene, as well as people from the surrounding communities. That's the only picture that I can find of the Opera House, and that would be the north wall that runs parallel to Church Street. And you can see the brick that has collapsed from the fire, and you can see the smoldering of the fire. So this is early in the morning. With the fire under control, they witnessed an unusual scene. The brick walls that remained standing needed to come down as they posed a danger. A rope was attached to the rear of the Marion Flyer, an interurban car belonging to the Union Traction Company, and as you can see, that's the Marion Flyer without the rope. The UTC's tracks ran down the middle of Harrison Street, making it convenient to bring the car to the front of the smoldering ruins. The rope refused to hold up under the strain, and other means were then devised to tear the walls down, and I assume the car then went on to Marion. With the fire over, the once proud Alexandria Opera House passed from the scene. It had flourished for over 20 years and had been a source of pride for the city. 5 years later, and 10 miles west of Alexandria, another Madison County city witnessed a fire that consumed its magnificent opera house. Site of the Alexandria Opera House today is this park. I'm sure any of you have been to Alexandria, you've seen the park. Well, that's where the Opera House was located. Elwood Opera Houses. Elwood had two. The first one is here, and it's still there. The second one was here where you see the vacant lot. The Elwood Opera House was truly a magnificent building, and it's still with us. Today, very little remains of the original interior appearance when it opened for business in October of 1891. Outside is a somewhat different story. Located on the southwest corner of South A and South Anderson Streets in Elwood, the front side of the three-story building retains near the top the words Opera House embossed in stone, proudly proclaiming for all to see the home of the once famous theater. And there it is. The main entrance was on Anderson Street in the center of the building, as it is today. Immediately beyond the entrance is a stairway climbing to the second floor. Those stairs today, although different in appearance from the 1890s, bear evidence of the wear they incurred over a century ago when they were used by theater goers ascending them to attend the performances at the Opera House on the second floor. That's a photograph of the original steps from yesterday, and those are the same steps, folks, that are there today. Now, when I was there, the owner of the building took me up the steps, and as we were ascending the steps, I noticed, you can't see them very well in my picture, but indentations in the risers. Indentations in the risers. I said, "What are those from?" He says, "Those are from horses' hooves." I said, "Horse hooves?" "Yes." I said, "Why would horses be climbing those steps?" He said they were being led up the steps as part of the performance. I said, "What performance were they a part of?" Ben-Hur. They did Ben-Hur on the stage at Elwood, and they had a treadmill on the stage, and they put 4 horses on that treadmill, tethered horses. The treadmill moved, so the horses galloped, and they recreated the chariots. Are you impressed? Are you impressed? They went to great lengths. Wouldn't you have liked to have seen that? One additional unique feature of the Elwood Opera House can be seen on South A Street near the rear of the building. A set of arches, one on the side and the other round back, appear in the walls, suggesting that once they had a purpose long since forgotten. And I'm speaking of this arch. It's all bricked in. Can you see it all right? Okay. That's on the side of the Opera House near its backside. Go around into this parking lot, and here's another arch that's been filled in here. So the first arch is right around the corner. Here's the second arch. Okay, what's that all about? Annabeth, you got it. An examination of an October 1892 Opera House map reveals the intended purpose. Since the Opera House was located on the second floor, it would have been quite difficult to deliver items such as stage scenery, props, and other large equipage necessary to support the major productions that played there. To circumvent this obstacle, the builder, Gustav V. Kramer, provided for the delivery of such items by creating an opening on the north side underneath the west end of the building, directly below the stage area on the second floor. Wagons that brought the production's equipment from the train depot to the Opera House would drive underneath the stage area and unload. When empty, the wagons pulled forward a short distance and then made a 90-degree turn and exited the building through the other opening located on the west or back side of the building. You follow what I'm saying? Okay. A hoist would then lift the items from the wagons to the second floor. The procedure was then reversed when the production was done and ready to depart Elwood for the next destination. And here you can see the arch, the one that's on the side. Can you see the word drive? Out like that. And then they would just reverse that to get back to the train depot when the show was over. These shows would play no more than 3 days, sometimes 2 days, sometimes just a day. So they had to be rather fluid. They had to be able to move quickly and get from one destination to the other, because that was their revenue. That's how they made money. That is the Elwood Opera House in its earlier days. And that's it today. Now, when I was there to take these pictures, this car pulled up. And a man got out of the car, and he hollered across the street, "Would you like to see the inside?" I said, "My wife's down the street, let me go get her." So we did. We went in, and he informed me that he is the third owner of the building. The first owner was Gustav Kramer. The second owner was the Masons. And he's the third owner. So this building has only had 3 owners since 1891. Another example of Kramer's ingenuity was the installation of 2 floors in the theater, one over the other. While the top floor was slanted towards the stage to provide patrons with the best possible viewing experience, the floor underneath was flat. Why, you ask? I didn't hear it, but we'll say somebody said why. This floor was there in case someday the theater would be used for other purposes requiring a flat surface. He thought ahead. As it turned out, he knew what he was doing. Now this shows you an October 1995 Opera House. Here's the stairway I showed you. Remember, it's on the second floor. And this is that drive I showed you. And this would be the stage and scenery area over that at the end of the building. Today it doesn't look anything like that inside. The Masons made this area here a great hall for meetings and dining and socializing. And when I was there that day, they were beginning to tear out some of the old stage area, and they found some of the old stage in the wall. So they were excited, I was excited, everybody was excited. The building is used today for wedding receptions, for post-prom parties, for any kind of social event that you want to rent it for. The theater was located on the second and third floors. The interior dimensions were approximately 62 feet wide by approximately 150 feet in length, including the stage, for around 9,300 square feet. The theater, which could seat 850 people, was managed by the builder's son, J.A. Kramer. The drawings of the interior do not reveal if all of the seating was on the main floor. But since the building was 3 stories high, it's a safe assumption that there was balcony seating available on the 3rd floor. While I was there that day, there were men working on the roof. And here you see the Opera House again, April 1899. During its 11 years of operation, the Elwood Opera House was host to a variety of famous personalities from the entertainment world. Many who performed there are memorialized today through an attractive display of photographs on the 2nd floor exhibited by the building's current owner, Randall Hull. That's the gentleman who took me through. While not familiar names to us today, they were certainly popular, well-known, and huge entertainment stars during their era. To name only a few from the vast array of photographs that have been neatly hung by Keith Israel. Keith is the great-great-grandson of the builder, Gustav Kramer, and he's the man that's in there doing all of the carpentry work. I thought that was pretty neat. They are. Raise your hands if you recognize any of these names. Frank Keenan, Maurice Barrymore, Ed Blondell, William S. Hart. Wasn't he the first cowboy?
No.
Maria Doro? No?
No, Laura's back there. She should know.
Who's the first cowboy, Laura?
I think Buddy Roosevelt.
Who is it?
Buddy Roosevelt was before William.
Buddy Roosevelt. Okay, thank you. Marie Doro, Charlie Grapewine. Charlie looks like he's had a little too much grape, doesn't he? Margaret Wycherley, Charlie Murray. Names not familiar to me, but obviously in their day they were big. But I remember hearing about this guy. I remember my grandparents talking about Fatty Arbuckle. This is how they're displayed all through the 2nd floor of the theater, of the Opera House. Very tastefully done. And they have researched to the point where they know every picture that's hung, that person performed there. Other famous people visited that Opera House as well. John L. Sullivan, who is recognized as the first heavyweight champion of gloved boxing, participated in an exhibition fight there during his farewell tour after his career ended in 1892. On September 13, 1892, future United States President William McKinley delivered a speech from the balcony of the Opera House to a crowd assembled on Anderson Street during Elwood's celebration of the opening of the American sheet and tin plate plant. Background. McKinley was a senator from Ohio, and he sponsored the legislation that helped with the tariff on incoming sheet metal to the United States, thereby making it expensive for foreign manufacturers to ship to the United States, thereby boosting the economic fortunes of those local tin plate. And so Elwood opens this huge factory, and they asked McKinley to come and make a speech to reward him for his work. He spoke from that balcony. The Kramer Grand Opera House. Elwood's population in 1892 was reported to be 4,500. 3 years later, it had risen to a reported 12,000, and 4 years after that, in 1899, it was 14,000. Again, the effect of the gas boom. The rapid increase in population fueled by the gas boom had Gustav Kramer thinking the city would need a new opera house that could accommodate the increasing population and the accompanying growth in attendance at his opera house. And I always think of the movie Jaws. You're going to have to get a bigger boat. During 1902, the new Kramer Grand was constructed at the southwest corner of South B and South Anderson Streets, 1 block south of the old Opera House, so just 1 block away. As spectacular as the Elwood Opera House was, the Kramer Grand was even more so. That's the Kramer Grand. Builder George H. Johnson erected an 1,100-seat theater that would dazzle today's theater goers. A color scheme of oriental red, gold, and old ivory was used throughout the spacious interior. The ceilings were in Dutch pink and sky blue panels. The stage was 60 feet wide and 40 feet from curtain line to the back wall. That's a big stage. The stage opening, or proscenium, arch was 36 feet wide and 30 feet high. Trapdoors were located in the floor to be used for various purposes. 2 drop curtains operated on ball bearings, making them absolutely noiseless as they raised and lowered the curtains. 9 men were required to take care of the stage during a performance. The footlight trough contained, now listen to this, 60 electric lights with another 45 in each of the 4 overhead border lights. In all, 400 lights illuminated that theater. 400. Red, white, and blue colored lights were used to create moonlight and sunrise effects. Are you getting a picture of a pretty elaborate place? The fall of the parquet main floor was designed so that every part of the building could be viewed from every seat. The foyer was a foot above stage level, with the floor sloping until it was 5 feet below the orchestra pit. The private boxes on the main floor each had a private entrance. They were furnished with high-back row-seat willow chairs. The main floor and balcony were fitted with modern opera chairs, while the benches, much like those used in churches, were in the gallery. The cheap seats, I guess. The basement contained 10 dressing rooms and a property rooms essential to the theater's successful operation. And this is a 1910 showing the theater. And 1916. The Kramer Grand opened on Thursday evening, October 30th, 1902. The last show at the Elwood Opera House was on Monday, October 27th, 3 days earlier. This was purposely planned in order that there would be no interruption in entertainment in Elwood. In 1907, Kramer sold the Opera House to the Masons, who made it their home for the next 92 years. For almost 17 years, the Kramer Grand enjoyed its place as Elwood's finest theater. But at 3 in the morning of Friday, September 26, 1919, a fire broke out that reduced the once magnificent structure to ruins. And it was never rebuilt. That's the site of the Kramer Grand. Opened October 30th, 1902, burned September 26, 1919. And the Elwood Opera House opened October 1891, closed October 27th, 1902. Magnificent building, wouldn't you agree? Yes. Elwood can be proud. Anderson Opera Houses. We had 3. The first 2 were located here, and the third one here. The Doxey Opera House Costing $80,000, the Doxey Opera House, located at 4147 North Meridian Street, was Anderson's first opera house. Built by Charles T. Doxey, it featured classic stage extravaganzas that traveled throughout the country. Little information exists about the physical appearance of the three-story Doxey Opera House. It was described as one of the finest, most complete, and best arranged opera houses between the Allegheny Mountains and the Mississippi River. That's quite a statement. That's quite a statement. It featured classic stage shows at reasonable prices in order that all could enjoy. The Fay Templeton Opera Company was the first performance on opening night, June 15, 1883, and the last performance was Mountain Pink, performed by Laura Dainty, November 14, 1884, which concluded at 11 o'clock that evening. 2 hours later, a fire started in the haymow of the Hearst Livery Stable, which adjoined the theater on the south. That haymow would be where the PNC bank building is today at 10th and Meridian. Many rushed to the scene, but they were unable to stop the flames. There was not enough water. The iron shutters that adorned the windows warped and melted under the intense heat. The fire soon spread to the gallery balcony and into the attic. Shortly thereafter, the entire interior was a mass of flames. Members of Dainty's troupe helped to remove the scenery. The fire dropped curtain, carpets, and draperies and propped them outside against nearby trees. Yes, downtown Anderson, trees. The loss was estimated at $75,000 and was uninsured. And here is the first performer, Fay Templeton, and the last performer, Laura Dainty, at the Doxey Opera House. The site of the Doxey Opera House is now this parking lot for the PNC Bank. Doxey Theater and Music Hall. Undaunted, Charles Doxey erected on the same site a more handsome playhouse than its predecessor. It was described as being the only one of its kind in Indiana. Its elegance and convenience gave to Anderson a far-reaching advertisement that made every citizen feel proud. Named the Doxey Theater and Music Hall, it was proudly described as a beautiful thespian temple. Although Doxey's second building was not quite as elaborate as his first, it was one of Central Indiana's finest opera houses when it opened the evening November 19, 1885. The building was an enormous one for the 1880s in Anderson. Measuring 125 feet wide by 225 feet deep, the three-story building contained a gallery on the third floor that overlooked the second floor balcony. The main floor measured 125 feet by 150 feet, including the stage. Located on the stage were barrels of water positioned at the rear corners in case of fire. There it is. There's the Doxey Opera House. And here's the barrels of water. Not sure a barrel of water would be much good. January 1886. March 1890. And there it is. Pretty handsome structure, wouldn't you say? You've been in that building. You've been in that building if you've lived in Anderson for any length of time. Here's a handbill for the Doxey Opera House dated August 31st, 1892. Miss Julia Marlowe, As You Like It. Lower floor seats are $1 and $1.50. Balcony, 50 and 75 cents. Eight years later, on March 30th, 1893, fire struck again. It was believed a gas jet, which was left burning near some of the draperies, caught them on fire and turned the scenery and the stage appliances, and then spread quickly, leaping from the upper windows and roof in a short time. The Anderson Fire Department responded with the hose wagon and ladder trucks within a minute of receiving the alarm. Sadly, the firemen were unable to do much good as the pumps at the waterworks were unable to provide enough pressure to be effective. Nevertheless, after 2 and a half, 1 hours, the blaze was brought under control. With the loss, Mr. Doxey gave up his idea on his dream of an opera house for the city. Guess what? He didn't have insurance on the second building. The front part of the theater was not badly damaged and was salvaged. The former Doxey Theater and Music Hall eventually became home of the Banner Store. How many have been in the Banner Store? I told you you'd been there. Here's a picture. Mail delivery on Meridian. Here's the theater. Look at the clocks, the shape of a man's pocket watch along the street. Quite a snowfall. Neat photograph, don't you agree? Another photograph showing it when it was the Banner Store, retaining the old ornamentation on the front of the building. The Grand Opera House. In December 1894, former Anderson Mayor John H. Terhune, and you see the years that he served 2 terms, gave the city a Christmas present in the form of news about a new opera house to be constructed at the northeast corner of 11th and Main Streets. The opera house was to be part of a larger building at that corner called the Opera Block. Business fronts would occupy the Main Street frontage, while the entrance to the Opera House was on 11th Street. The portion of the building housing the Opera House was roughly 100 by 200 feet. The 3-story building contained 2 balconies, one above the other, and seated 1,400 people. So of all of the opera houses in Madison County, seating capacity-wise, this was the largest, at 1,400 people. 2 double-door arched entries covered by elaborate marquee welcomed patrons to the Grand Opera House on the opening night, October 22nd, 1895. And that happens to be a poster from that night. How many remember that building? Well, it was part of the Grand Hotel. Here's the Grand Opera House, and here's the Grand Hotel at 11th and Main, northwest corner. Another photograph of it. Interior view. Upper balcony, lower balcony, main floor. And the best shot is this one. These would have been box seats up near the stage. Bob Quinn called me earlier this afternoon. He said, "Steve, I wish I could come tonight, but I can't." But he says, "I can remember walking down the aisles of the Grand Opera House." Do any of the others of you who raised your hand, Gene, do you remember?
I attended some kind of a performance there, but I was quite young. Now I'm quite old.
The Anderson High School class, Anderson High School in 1888, this was where they held classes while they built the Main Street School. They held their classes in the Opera House. A September 1895, this of course, this would be the opening of the main floor, and all of this would be balcony area around the Opera House. When this building was torn down to make way for the police station, I'm told by, and maybe it was Frank that told me, Frank's got a quizzical look on his face, so it wasn't Frank, that 3 floors down was the basement. It was 3 floors deep, the basement for the Opera House. Filled with all kinds of rubble, the gentleman who told me said, "Boy, wouldn't you like to have a shot at what that rubble was?" Patrons were treated to the opera Faust by Goethe. I think I'm saying that right. The Grand contained the second largest stage in Indiana. Only the English Theater on the Circle in Indianapolis surpassed it in size. In a panel above the proscenium, that's the stage area, was an allegorical painting representing the capers of Cupid and a song. And to the right and left of the stage were large and beautiful figures representing slumber and the awakening, or night and day. I've got a picture of that. I didn't know what I had till I found the description. The drop curtain depicted a court scene from Hamlet. Would you like to see the picture? Sure. Well, if you'll come back... Isn't that neat? That is a perfect, the description I gave you is what you're seeing right there. That is the stage of the Grand Opera House. And you can see to the left and right the boxes here. And look at the minstrels. During the time of the opera houses, the most popular companies to play were the minstrel shows. Of all of the acts that played, the minstrel shows were the most popular. And in fact, these are 2 Anderson minstrels. The man here in the back is Joseph E. Radabaugh, and the other man is Forrest Beach. 1900 view of the Opera House. A signature event for the Grand Opera House was the appearance of a 110-member cast supported by a 50-piece orchestra performed by a touring company's production of Madame Butterfly. A 110-member cast and a 50-piece orchestra. The Grand was also used for conventions, speeches, musical presentations, boxing matches, wrestling, and other attractions, making for an extensive use. They had to put other things in there to make money, including Primrose and West big minstrels played there. And basically, the people I showed you that played in Elwood, they played in Anderson either the night before or the night after. And the same way here, they just traveled back and across and played at all the places. John Philip Sousa. What I wish was, and they did this so many times in their handbills, they give you a date, but no year. No year. And it's frustrating for somebody like me who's trying to put together a story. I'd love to know what the year was to be able to say John Philip Sousa was here, but he was here many times. I know that. Uncle Tom's Cabin. Seating 10 and 20 and 30 cents. And look how often they turned over the acts. April 2nd, April 3rd, April 11th, 12th, 13th, 18th. Watch papers for particulars. There's probably a better way to say that, isn't there? Than just some more things that we've acquired. Your historical society is doing an awful good job.
Yes.
This is interesting. Bill Knapp, you'll appreciate this. Where are you, Bill? There. What are those, Bill?
What's that?
What are those?
They're trade tokens.
They're trade tokens. Can you read what it says? The Opera House Grocery? W.B. Nolan? So there was an Opera House Grocery. Well, you'd assume it was in the Opera House, wouldn't you? No. It operated at 231 East 13th Street in Anderson from 1914 to 1915. That's the only time he was there. Now, the Opera House was located at 110, 114 East 11th. So it was 2 blocks, the Opera House would have been 2 blocks west and 2 blocks north. 4 blocks from Mr. Nolan's Grocery. Mr. Nolan's Grocery is still there today. It looks like this. That's 13th and Fletcher on the southwest corner. All across the America, the arrival of silent film signaled the end of the opera houses as viable forms of live entertainment. Silent films were the entertainment rage, and as a growing number of new theaters opened to take advantage of the phenomenon, many former opera houses converted. Such was the case with the Grand Opera House. It ceased operation sometime in 1923 and was reopened under the name Granada Theater in 1924, featuring silent films. The public's taste in entertainment had shifted, and with the shift, the traveling live productions could no longer sustain themselves. And this is a picture of the Grand Opera House, only now it is the Granada. Can you see that? With the conversion of the Grand Opera House to the Granada Theater, an entertainment forum in Madison County came to an end. An era begun in Madison County in 1883 was over. For 4 decades, tens of thousands of Madison County citizens had enjoyed the greatest live theatrical productions our country had to offer. During that time, 5 of the 8 Madison County opera houses had endured disastrous fires, leaving them in ruins. In 1950, a wrecking ball brought down the 6th one, the Grand Opera House in Anderson. It had been vacant since the Granada Theater closed its doors in 1937. I'll bet that broke a lot of folks' hearts. She still lives. My friend, Charlie Gilmore, sent me this email September 3rd, 2013, and it reads, "The house my father and grandfather built using lumber salvaged from the Anderson Opera House is at 918 West 2nd Street. The material was 6 2x12 boards nailed together forming a 12x12 beam. We had to pull the nails, separate the boards, then rip them into 2x4s. The material was probably native timber and quite tough. A table saw with an electric motor was used but needed an additional gasoline engine to turn the blade due to the age and toughness of the wood. And with the wood, they built this house." So she still lives. Fortunately for us, 2 former opera houses still survive, one in Pendleton and one in Elwood. From their parents and the people in whose hands they currently are entrusted, they should be around for a long time to come for future generations to ponder and remember their days of glory.